People have whispered about Matt from Matt's Off-Road Recovery for years. Comment sections filled with theories, reaction videos piled up, and fans waited for the moment the truth would finally surface. But this story isn't built on guesswork or internet drama. It's built on timelines, headlines, and details most viewers never connect. The calm desert rescuer image made everything harder to believe, which only fueled the rumors further. Now, after months of speculation, the pieces line up in a way that changes how this saga looks forever. And once you see what was confirmed, the conversation feels very different. For a long time, Matt wasn't just another YouTuber. He felt like the guy you wanted showing up when everything went wrong. Stranded car, broken axle, miles from pavement. Matt's Off-Road Recovery turned worst-case scenarios into oddly relaxing videos. Calm voice, problem-solving mindset, no yelling, no ego. That image mattered more than people realized because viewers didn't just watch the channel, they trusted it. The desert hero persona didn't come from flashy edits or over-the-top drama. It came from consistency. Episode after episode showed Matt helping strangers who were stressed, broke down, or completely stuck. No judgment, no lectures, just solutions. Over time, that created something powerful: credibility. Fans felt like they knew him, and when someone builds that kind of connection, any crack in the image feels personal. That's why the rumors hit so hard when they first started circulating. At first, they were vague. Subtle comments asking questions. People noticing small changes and wondering out loud if something was off. Nothing concrete, just enough to spark curiosity. And curiosity spreads fast when the audience already cares. What really fueled it was the contrast. The idea that someone so calm, so methodical, so seemingly transparent could be hiding something didn't make sense to viewers. And when things don't add up, people start digging. Old videos get rewatched. Offhand comments get reinterpreted. Innocent moments suddenly feel loaded with meaning. That's when speculation turns into obsession. Not because people want drama, but because they want clarity. When you build your platform on trust, silence becomes loud. And the longer questions go unanswered, the more the audience fills in the gaps themselves. And that's exactly how this story shifted from admiration to suspicion. And what surfaced next is what really changed everything. The shift from rumors to reality happened fast. In late 2021, quiet speculation was suddenly replaced by something far more serious: real headlines. Reports out of Utah revealed that Matt, identified legally as Matthew Wetzel, had been charged in connection with insurance-related claims tied to his towing business. And just like that, the conversation changed. This wasn't YouTube drama anymore. This was the kind of news that doesn't disappear with a new upload. According to reporting that cited court documents, the charge was initially filed as a second-degree felony, connected to allegations of fraudulent insurance claims involving AOA. That single detail stopped a lot of people in their tracks. Felony isn't a word fans ever expected to see next to Matt's name, and it immediately raised questions about how long this situation had been building behind the scenes. What made it even more unsettling was how little most viewers knew at the time. There was no dramatic video, no long explanation, no immediate breakdown of events. Instead, fans found out the same way everyone else did, through articles, reposts, and screenshots spreading across social media. For a creator whose brand was built on transparency and calm explanations, the silence felt heavy. As the news circulated, people started connecting dots. Matt's towing company, Winder Towing, had long been mentioned casually in videos. Now it was at the center of the allegations. Viewers revisited old recoveries, wondering which ones were tied to insurance, which weren't, and whether they'd misunderstood how the business side worked all along. But the most important thing was this: the charge wasn't a rumor. It was real, documented, and filed. And once that line was crossed, there was no going back to, maybe this is nothing. because when official paperwork enters the picture, everything feels different. And the details behind that charge are where this story takes an even sharper turn. What really sent this situation into overdrive was the specific detail that came out of the investigation. This wasn't some vague paperwork issue or a simple misunderstanding. According to reporting that referenced court documents, investigators focused on how certain recovery jobs were described in insurance claims, specifically when it came to off-road recoveries and AAA coverage. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. AAA coverage generally applies to vehicles disabled on maintained roadways, not deep in off-road terrain. That line, road versus off-road, became the center of everything. Investigators allegedly believed some claims described recoveries in a way that made them appear eligible for coverage when they may not have been. Once that detail surfaced, the story took on a completely different tone. For fans, this was unsettling. Off-road recoveries were the entire point of the channel. Seeing that same activity mentioned in legal reporting made viewers question how much they really understood about what they were watching. People started asking whether entertainment, business, and insurance had been blurred together behind the scenes. Online discussions exploded, but not in the typical drama way. Instead of insults, people debated technicalities. Where exactly does a road end? What qualifies as maintained? How much discretion does a tow operator have when filing a claim? Those questions might sound boring, but they mattered because the answers determined whether this was a mistake or something more serious. And that gray area is what made the situation feel so tense. Because gray areas don't offer easy explanations. They leave room for interpretation, and interpretation is where trust either survives or collapses. At this point, the narrative wasn't about intent yet. It was about accuracy, what was said on claims, what actually happened on the ground, and whether those two things lined up. And once that gap became the focus, everyone started waiting for one thing: Matt's side of the story. As the case moved forward, two very different narratives began to form, and the gap between them is what kept the rumors alive. On one side were investigators and prosecutors pointing to patterns they believed showed claims that crossed a line. On the other side was Matt's legal team, pushing back on the idea that this was some intentional scheme. And that contrast mattered because it shaped how people interpreted everything that came next. According to public reporting, the state's position centered on the idea that certain insurance claims contained information that didn't fully match the circumstances of the recoveries. The focus wasn't flashy or emotional. It was procedural. What was written, how it was submitted, and whether those details changed how the claims were processed. To the state, those differences were enough to justify criminal charges. But Matt's attorney painted a very different picture. Statements described the issue as a dispute rooted in technicalities and business practices, not deception. The defense suggested this was about how off-road recoveries were categorized, how policies were interpreted, and how those interpretations evolved over time. In that framing, it wasn't about intent. It was about a system that didn't always fit the real-world situations Matt's business dealt with. That split created confusion for fans, because both explanations sounded plausible, depending on which details you focused on. And without a clear public breakdown from Matt himself, viewers were left trying to interpret legal language on their own. For an audience used to simple, step-by-step explanations in recovery videos, that uncertainty was uncomfortable. This is where the speculation peaked. Some people leaned toward benefit of the doubt. Others felt the charges spoke for themselves. And with no dramatic confrontation or public back and forth, the tension just sat there, unresolved. But then the case reached a point where speculation didn't matter anymore because a decision was coming. And that decision would do something the internet couldn't: officially lock part of this story into record. The moment that finally shifted everything came in early 2022 when the case reached its resolution. According to court records referenced in reporting, Matt entered a no-contest plea to a Class A misdemeanor related to a false or fraudulent insurance claim. The original felony charge was reduced, and with that, years of speculation suddenly had something concrete to react to. A no-contest plea doesn't sound dramatic, but it matters. It means Matt didn't formally admit guilt, but he also didn't fight the charge in court. Legally, it allows the court to treat the case as a conviction without forcing a public confession. For fans trying to read between the lines, that distinction became the center of debate. Some saw it as a strategic decision to move on. Others saw it as quiet confirmation that something went wrong behind the scenes. The court outcome included probation, along with restitution and fines, including repayment tied to the insurance company involved. That detail alone was enough to end one argument. This wasn't dismissed or swept away. There were real consequences, officially recorded, and that's why so many people describe this moment as when the rumors were finally confirmed. What's important is what didn't happen. There was no explosive trial, no dramatic testimony played out online, no viral courtroom clips. Instead, the situation closed quietly, almost uncomfortably so. And for an internet audience used to spectacle, that silence felt louder than any statement. By this point, the facts were no longer hypothetical. The legal system had spoken, even if it did so without drama. And once that door closed, the story shifted again, from what happened to what does this mean for everything else? Because the real surprise wasn't the plea itself. It was what happened to Matt's channel after the dust settled. Even after the court outcome, the rumors didn't slow down. In some ways, they got louder. Instead of focusing on the case itself, attention shifted to everything around it. Upload schedules, subtle changes in tone, familiar faces appearing less often. Fans started reading between the lines, convinced there was more happening off camera than anyone was saying out loud. Online forums and comment sections filled with theories. Some viewers believed the legal situation explained why certain crew members moved on, or why the channel felt different for a stretch of time. Others argued those changes were normal for a growing business and had nothing to do with the case at all. The problem was that without clear explanations, every small change felt suspicious to someone. What kept the speculation alive wasn't new evidence, it was silence. Matt didn't make a long, emotional video addressing every rumor. He didn't break down the case point by point for the audience. And while that's completely understandable from a legal and personal standpoint, the internet rarely rewards restraint. When creators don't control the narrative, the audience builds one for them. Reaction channels played a big role too. Some stuck closely to verified facts. Others leaned heavily into implication, framing unrelated events as signs or proof. Titles became more dramatic, thumbnails more intense. And slowly, the original legal issue started blending with pure speculation, making it harder for casual viewers to separate fact from theory. What's ironic is that the channel itself never fully collapsed under the weight of the rumors. Views fluctuated, opinions split, but the core audience remained. That alone confused critics and supporters alike. If the situation was really as damaging as some claimed, why was the channel still standing? And that question led to a bigger realization. This story wasn't just about what happened in court. It was about whether trust, once shaken, could ever be fully rebuilt in public. And what Matt did next is what truly surprised everyone. What caught almost everyone off guard was what happened after everything was supposedly settled. Instead of fading out or quietly stepping back, Matt's off-road recovery kept moving forward. New videos dropped. Recoveries kept coming. The desert rescues that built the channel in the first place never stopped. And for many viewers, that consistency felt like a statement on its own. To some, it looked like resilience. A creator choosing to keep his head down, do the work, and let time handle the rest. To others, it felt unresolved, like an elephant in the room no one was allowed to mention. But either way, the channel's survival changed the narrative. The story was no longer just about a legal case. It became about perception, accountability, and how much an audience is willing to separate content from controversy. This is where people say, Matt finally confirmed the rumors, even without a dramatic announcement, not with a speech, not with an apology video, but through the outcome itself. The court resolution, the consequences, and the decision to move on quietly told a story that words never did. For many viewers, that was enough clarity to stop speculating and start forming their own conclusions. At the same time, others never fully let it go. Every new upload still attracts comments asking for explanations that will probably never come. And that's the trade-off of building a brand on trust and authenticity. When cracks appear, they don't just disappear with time. In the end, this saga says as much about the audience as it does about Matt. People don't just watch creators anymore, they invest in them. And when reality intrudes on the image, everyone has to decide what matters more, the work on screen or the questions behind it. Because once trust is tested in public, it never resets. It only evolves. In the end, this story was never just about rumors or headlines. It was about trust, perception, and what happens when a carefully built image collides with real-world consequences. The facts are now on record, but how people interpret them is still split. Some see accountability and growth. Others see questions that were never fully answered. And that tension is why this conversation hasn't gone away. Matt's off-road recovery continues, but the way viewers watch has changed. Once the curtain gets pulled back, even slightly, you never see the show the same way again.